Imagine walking into a room and suddenly having absolutely no idea why you're there.
Oh, yeah. The classic blank slate.
Right, you're just standing in the doorway, kind of scanning the furniture, hoping for some sort of clue, or, maybe you're mid-sentence in a crucial meeting, and a really basic, everyday word, a word you've used like 10,000 times, it just entirely vanishes from your vocabulary.
Just completely gone.
Yeah, exactly. You feel like your brain is wrapped in this thick, heavy cotton wool. And I mean, it is a terrifying experience, if we're being completely honest. When it happens to you, your mind almost instantly jumps to the absolute darkest conclusion.
Oh, for sure.
You start secretly wondering, like, is this it? Is this early onset dementia?
Yeah, and it's arguably one of the most isolating fears a person can carry around.
Absolutely.
You feel like you're losing your grip on your own mind. And because it's invisible to everyone else, you often you suffer through it completely alone.
But if you are going through this right now, we need to completely reframe what is actually happening here. The data we are looking at today for this deep dive tells a staggeringly different story.
The completely different story.
Yeah. So recent surveys from Channel 4 and the British Menopause Society show that between 60% and 73% of women experience this intense brain fog, forgetfulness, and just this profound lack of concentration during the menopause transition.
Right. It's incredibly common.
So it's really not just you. It is a measurable physiological phenomenon.
It's a massive biological event. I mean, the symptoms you're feeling, they're just the outward manifestation of some very intense microscopic remodeling happening inside the brain.
Which brings us to our mission for this deep dive. We want to demystify exactly what is causing this cognitive chaos. We're going to dig into the latest research to show you why this intense brain fog is a symptom of a shifting hormonal landscape and definitely not dementia.
Exactly. It's about hormones.
Right. But to truly grasp why the brain gets so wildly unpredictable during perimenopause, we kind of have to throw out the old biology textbook.
Yeah.
We've always been taught that estrogen is strictly a reproductive hormone, right? Like, it lives in the ovaries, it manages pregnancy, and, well, that's the end of the story.
Which is just a fundamental misunderstanding of human biology.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yes, estrogen drives reproduction, obviously. But when it comes to the brain, estrogen is a critical, foundational neurological fuel.
Fuel, right.
If we look at the brain's architecture, regions that are crucial for memory, mood regulation, and executive function, specifically the hippocampus, the prefrontal cortex, and the basal forebrain, they are absolutely studded with estrogen docking stations.
Wow, studded with them.
Yeah, exactly. The hormone doesn't just float by, it actively binds to these areas to run daily operations.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if estrogen is anchoring itself in the memory and executive function centers of the brain, how is it actually functioning as fuel? Because the research we reviewed dives really heavily into brain bioenergetics, and I always assumed glucose was the brain's only real fuel.
Well, you're not entirely wrong. Glucose is the raw material, but estrogen is what allows the brain to actually use it.
Oh, I see.
Think of estrogen as the master conductor of bioenergetics. It actively regulates the transport of glucose from your bloodstream across the cell membranes and right into your neurons.
So it's opening the door.
Exactly. And once the glucose is inside the cell, estrogen then regulates the mitochondria.
Power plants of the cell.
Right.
You got it.
It tells the mitochondria exactly how to burn that glucose to generate ATP, which is cellular energy. Without estrogen directing traffic, those brain cells simply cannot metabolize energy efficiently.
So it's essentially the brain's master power grid operator.
I love that analogy.
Right, like it doesn't just supply the coal, it actually opens the intake valves, fires the furnace, and makes sure the electricity actually reaches the grid.
Exactly.
But from what I understand from the sources, it's not just managing the current, it's physically building the wiring too.
It is actively shaping the hardware.
Yeah.
Estrogen is so powerful that it operates on multiple levels simultaneously. It has what we call non-genomic pathways, meaning it triggers rapid, almost instantaneous signaling changes at the surface of the cell. But it also has genomic pathways. Estrogen can literally slip right into the command center of the neuron, the nucleus, and rewrite the daily genetic instructions.
They rewrite the instructions.
Yeah. Through this process, it stimulates the creation of brand new neurons, and it increases the density of dendritic spines.
Those are the little branches, right?
Right, the microscopic branches that connect one neuron to another.
So it's laying down new track to keep ideas flowing. That alone is a massive job description for just one hormone. But then you look at the neurotransmitter side of the equation. It's not just building the hardware, it's running the software.
It really is the ultimate chemical conductor. So estrogen upregulates serotonin, which is what keeps your mood stable and resilient.
Okay.
It modulates dopamine, which is the chemical driver of motivation and focus. And it interacts heavily with acetylcholine.
Which does what?
That's the primary neurotransmitter responsible for encoding new memories.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And while it's orchestrating all of this, estrogen acts as a neuroprotectant. It actively shields the brain from oxidative stress, it calms inflammation, and it constantly boosts a protein called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF.
BDNF, I've seen that mentioned.
Yeah, you can think of BDNF as a potent fertilizer for your brain cells, basically keeping the whole system lush and structurally sound.
That paints just an incredible picture of the premenopausal brain. The grid is humming, the fuel is flowing, the branches are growing, and the system is just flooded with fertilizer. The operator has absolutely everything under control.
Right, until perimenopause.
Exactly. We hit perimenopause. And the research makes it super clear this isn't just a slow, gentle dimming of the lights. The operator starts acting erratically.
That is the defining feature of perimenopause. It is not a graceful decline at all. Estrogen fluctuates wildly.
Wildly.
Yeah, you have days where it spikes to levels higher than you ever experienced in your 20s, followed by days where it absolutely crashes to near zero.
Which sounds exhausting.
It is. And this volatility throws the brain into an acute energy crisis. Because the brain relies on estrogen to pull glucose into the cells. When estrogen crashes, the brain experiences a sudden, massive drop in glucose utilization.
So the fuel is there, but...
Exactly. The neurons are surrounded by fuel in the bloodstream, but without estrogen to open the door, they are essentially starving.
Which perfectly explains that feeling of walking through wet concrete. Like when you try to recall a word and it just isn't there, it's not because your brain is permanently broken.
No, not at all.
You literally lack the cellular energy in that specific moment to fire the synapse and form the thought.
Precisely. And while the cells are struggling for power, the entire chemical symphony falls out of tune. When estrogen drops, serotonin and dopamine crash right alongside it.
So mood and motivation just tank.
Suddenly your mood destabilizes, your motivation evaporates, and at the exact same time, another vital hormone, progesterone, begins to plummet.
And progesterone does what again?
Progesterone is the brain's primary calming agent. It usually enhances a neurotransmitter called GABA, which acts like the brain's braking system, keeping you relaxed. When progesterone drops, the brakes basically give out.
So let's picture this. The listener is sitting in a meeting, physically exhausted at a cellular level, right? They're unable to focus because their dopamine is tanked, and they're vibrating with intense, unprovoked anxiety because their GABA brakes just completely failed.
It is a perfect storm.
It's awful. And physically, the actual structure of those memory centers is taking a hit during this roller coaster, right?
It is, yeah. Without consistent estrogen to maintain them, those dendritic spines we talked about, the physical connections between your neurons, they begin to thin out. And your levels of that brain fertilizer, BDNF, significantly drop.
Oh, man.
So the structural integrity of the brain temporarily weakens. However, this brings us to one of the most critical pieces of longitudinal research we have, the SWAN study.
Study of women's health across the nation, right?
Exactly. They tracked women for years and found that while cognitive performance definitively, measurably dips during this chaotic transition phase, it often recovers to premenopausal levels once a woman is fully postmenopausal.
Wait, I need to challenge that because it seems totally counterintuitive.
Okay, let's hear it.
If estrogen is the fuel, right, and it fluctuates crazily during perimenopause before eventually dropping and staying low forever, why does the brain fog eventually go away? Shouldn't a brain running on permanently low estrogen just get worse and worse over time?
What's fascinating here is the sheer resilience and adaptability of the human brain. The intense fog, the memory lapses, the cognitive chaos, those aren't primarily caused by the absolute low level of estrogen.
They aren't.
No, they are caused by the unpredictable fluctuation. It is the chaos of the brain waking up every single day and not knowing what fuel source it has to work with.
Oh, that makes sense.
Right. Once a woman reaches menopause, which is defined as 12 straight months without a cycle, her hormone levels establish a stable baseline. It's a lower baseline, yes, but it is stable.
The turbulence stops.
Exactly. And once the environment stops constantly shifting, the brain recalibrates. It finds a brand new metabolic normal, it compensates, and the fog typically lifts.
That is such a vital message. The chaos is the transition, it is not the destination.
Beautifully put.
But, while you are caught in the middle of that transition, it can feel like you are literally losing your mind, especially when you see studies showing that the physical shape of the brain is changing. Let's look at the UK Biobank study from the sources. They analyzed brain scans from over 125,000 women.
Yeah, the scale of that study is just incredible. It provides some profound insights into brain morphology during midlife. It basically removes any doubt that menopause is a neurological event.
Right, because they found that menopause is associated with actual observable reductions in gray matter volume.
Measurable shrinkage, yes.
And it wasn't just random shrinkage across the board. It was highly localized in the medial temporal lobe and the anterior cingulate cortex. Plus, the MRI scans showed these things called white matter hyperintensities.
Yes.
From the scans and the research, they literally look like bright white spots, which indicate areas of tissue damage caused by reduced blood flow. And these spots were particularly prominent in women who went through early menopause or suffered from severe hot flashes.
And the location of those changes explains so much about the symptoms. The medial temporal lobe is the absolute epicenter for memory formation,
Okay.
and the anterior cingulate cortex is heavily involved in emotional regulation, decision-making, and cognitive control.
Which are exactly the things that go haywire.
Right. So when we see physical volume reductions and altered blood flow in those specific hubs, it perfectly maps onto the patient's lived experience of memory lapses and wild mood swings.
But this brings us to an incredibly frustrating paradox, one that researchers like Dr. Caroline Gurvich and Professor Amy Spector at University College London are finally dragging into the spotlight.
The testing paradox.
Yes. A woman goes to her doctor. She is terrified. She says, I am forgetting my own children's names. I can't read a spreadsheet at work. I literally feel like my brain is dying. The doctor gives her a standardized, objective cognitive test, and she passes it with flying colors. Her scores remain completely within the expected clinical ranges.
Happens all the time.
How is that even possible if her gray matter is literally changing?
Because traditional cognitive tests are incredibly blunt instruments. They were designed decades ago, primarily to detect the severe, permanent deficits associated with Alzheimer's and clinical dementia.
Ah, so they're looking for the wrong thing.
Exactly. They were never calibrated to detect the subtle, subjective, fluctuating changes of the menopause transition.
It makes me think of an old car. It's like taking your car to the mechanic because every time you press the gas pedal, it shudders, it feels incredibly sluggish, and you're burning through a tank of gas in like 2 days.
Right.
The mechanic plugs in his diagnostic computer, takes it for a quick spin on the highway, and says, well, it still hits 60 miles per hour, so the engine is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Sure, it still gets to 60, but the engine is working twice as hard and screaming the entire time.
That is precisely what functional MRI scans of menopausal women show.
Really?
Yes. When they are given a memory task and a scanner, their brains show massive overactivation compared to premenopausal women. To achieve that normal score on the doctor's test, her brain has to recruit entirely secondary neural pathways.
Wow.
It is working in overdrive, burning incredible amounts of sheer cognitive effort just to compensate for the fluctuating fuel supply. She passes the test, but the hidden cost is absolute mental exhaustion.
So historically, when doctors looked at those perfect test scores and told women, your memory's fine, it's just stress, you're just overworked, they weren't necessarily just being dismissive. They were relying on diagnostic tools that were completely blind to what was actually happening.
Exactly. They were measuring the output without measuring the effort required to produce that output. This is exactly why specialized researchers have had to develop entirely new tools, like the Menotti rating scale.
And what does that do?
It's a clinical tool that actually evaluates the unique cognitive and physical profile of the menopausal transition. It finally acknowledges that the extra effort, the exhaustion, and the subjective feeling of brain fog are clinically valid and measurable.
I love that the field is finally building tools that validate the reality women have been reporting for decades. But of course, this neurological transition doesn't happen in a sterile laboratory.
No, it does not.
It happens in the messy reality of a woman's life. Which brings us to the compounding saboteurs. Because it's not just the dropping estrogen causing the fog, it's the collateral damage of those drops. Let's talk about sleep, stress, and cortisol.
You truly cannot separate the cognitive symptoms of menopause from the disruption of sleep. When estrogen and other hormones fluctuate and drop, they severely disrupt the brain's thermoregulatory center,
Which leads to?
vasomotor symptoms,
Mm-hmm.
severe hot flashes, and night sweats. And these are not just a matter of waking up feeling a little warm. They cause profound chronic sleep fragmentation. A woman might be jolted out of a deep sleep cycle 5, 10, or 15 times a night.
And deep sleep is when the brain essentially takes out the trash and files the paperwork, right? It's totally critical for memory consolidation. If you never hit that deep phase, the memories from the day never get properly stored.
Exactly. Sleep deprivation independently destroys working memory, focus, and emotional regulation. Even if a woman's hormones were completely perfectly balanced, raking up soaked in sweat 10 times a night for months on end would guarantee severe brain fog.
Just on its own.
Just on its own. The sleep loss alone is a massive cognitive disruptor.
And then you layer psychosocial stress on top of that. Think about the timing of all this. Perimenopause usually hits right at the peak of a woman's career, precisely when she has the most responsibility.
Oh, yeah. The timing is brutal.
Right. She might be managing a team at work, raising teenagers, and taking care of aging parents all at the exact same time. That environment generates immense psychosocial stress, which floods the body with cortisol.
And cortisol is incredibly neurotoxic when it becomes chronic. High levels of cortisol directly impair function in the hippocampus. So now look at the biological trap that has been set here.
Okay.
Dropping progesterone removes the GABA braking system, leaving the brain highly prone to anxiety. That biological anxiety mixed with real-world midlife stress sends cortisol soaring.
Oh, wow.
The high cortisol damages memory formation and makes the brain hypervigilant, which further fragments the already terrible sleep. The lack of sleep makes the hot flashes worse, which triggers more anxiety. It is a brutally efficient, vicious cycle.
So, what does this all mean? If you're a listener currently trying to navigate this, you aren't just dealing with a simple hormone deficiency. You were essentially fighting a multi-front war against your own biology and your external environment.
You're fighting on every front simultaneously. And this biopsychosocial reality is exactly why we see so many brilliant, highly capable women lose their confidence at midlife.
Yeah.
It's why so many step down from leadership roles or leave the workforce entirely. They think they are failing. We have to change the clinical approach to recognize that this memory loss is the crushing, compounded weight of energy crises, sleep deprivation, and chronic cortisol exposure.
Okay, we've outlined the problem, and frankly, it is daunting, but let's pivot to how we clear the air. Now that we understand the intricate mechanics of this fog, how can the listener actually support their brain? Because the sources dive heavily into interventions, starting with a very loud, very complex debate around HRT, hormone replacement therapy.
Right. HRT is the most direct intervention because it addresses the foundational loss of estrogen and progesterone. But the neurological data on HRT revolves almost entirely around something called the timing hypothesis.
The timing hypothesis, okay.
The evidence strongly suggests that if HRT is introduced early in the menopausal transition, like during perimenopause or very shortly after menopause, it can be incredibly neuroprotective.
Because it stabilizes the fuel.
Exactly. It stabilizes the brain's bioenergetics, calms the fluctuations, and studies show it can significantly improve verbal memory and processing speed.
But if you wait too long, the effect flips, right? Because the sources highlight the WIMS study, the Women's Health Initiative Memory Study, and that painted a very different picture.
It did, and it caused a lot of panic. But context is everything here. The WIMS study primarily looked at women who were over 65 years old.
Okay, so well past transition.
Right. These were women who were starting hormone therapy a decade or more past their menopausal transition. In that specific older demographic, introducing HRT was actually associated with a decline in cognitive function and an increased risk of dementia.
Oh, wow. Why?
Because the brain had already adapted to a low estrogen environment. Flooding it with hormones a decade later was biologically confusing and potentially harmful. The takeaway is that there is a critical window of opportunity early on, but it is not a blanket solution for all ages.
And there is another incredibly important nuance we have to cover, which goes back to that massive UK Biobank study. The data showed that women who use HRT actually had slightly lower gray matter volumes and reported higher mental health symptoms compared to women who never used HRT.
Yes, that is the data.
If you just read the headline, it sounds like HRT is literally shrinking your brain.
Sounds terrifying, I know.
Yeah.
But researchers heavily caution against taking that raw data at face value. In epidemiology, there's a concept called reverse causation.
Okay, how does that work here?
Well, you have to ask, who are the women most likely to go to a doctor and demand HRT?
The ones who are suffering the most.
Exactly. It is the women experiencing the most severe, debilitating symptoms. It's the women whose hot flashes are unbearable, whose brain fog is threatening their jobs, whose depression is profound. So the HRT isn't causing the brain changes or the mental health struggles.
Oh, I see.
Rather, the women who already have the most intense biological response to menopause are the ones self-selecting into the HRT group.
That makes perfect sense. The medication didn't cause the fire. The people standing near the fire trucks are just the ones whose houses were burning the hottest.
Perfect way to put it.
So for women in that early window, HRT can be a game changer. But what about the non-hormonal route? Not every woman is a candidate for HRT, and some simply don't want to take it. What else clears the fog?
The brain is highly responsive to lifestyle interventions that specifically target blood flow and inflammation. Aerobic exercise is arguably the most powerful non-pharmacological tool we have.
Like running, biking.
Brisk walking, cycling, swimming. Yeah. These activities force fresh, oxygenated blood into the brain and naturally stimulate the release of BDNF, our brain fertilizer. It actively counteracts the structural thinning we talked about earlier.
The sources also emphasize nutrition and targeted supplementation, like the Mediterranean diet, which is super rich in healthy fats and antioxidants, helps lower that systemic inflammation.
Huge factor.
And omega-3 fatty acids are crucial for cell membrane health. Ensuring you have adequate vitamin D levels is vital for neuroprotection. There's also some fascinating data in there on L-theanine, which is an amino acid found in green tea, and it's been shown to improve mental alertness and working memory during periods of stress.
We also really have to address the psychological toll.
Yeah.
Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, is highly recommended in the clinical guidelines.
Even for brain fog.
Yes. It obviously doesn't change your hormones, but it is incredibly effective at breaking that vicious cycle of stress and sleep loss. It gives women practical tools to lower cortisol, manage the anxiety triggered by dropping GABA, and significantly improve their sleep architecture despite the hot flashes.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. When you look at all of these interventions, tracking your symptoms, researching the timing hypothesis of HRT, planning out a Mediterranean diet, finding the motivation to do aerobic exercise, and fiercely advocating for yourself in a doctor's office to get the right blood tests or a prescription,
Yeah.
you have to use your severely foggy, exhausted, energy-starved brain to manage the treatment for your severely foggy, exhausted brain.
It's an incredible irony, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, it underscores exactly why systemic support and education are so vital. It is a monumental burden to place on a compromised system.
It really is.
Women are basically being asked to act as their own specialized medical researchers at the exact moment their cognitive load is maxed out. While treatments are highly individualized, the absolute most critical takeaway from all of this data is validation.
Yes.
These symptoms are physically grounded in biology, they are highly treatable, and for the vast majority of women, they are a temporary phase of remodeling.
A temporary phase of remodeling. That is exactly what we need to hold on to. Let's briefly recap the journey we took today. We learned that estrogen is the brain's master bioenergetic conductor, keeping the power grid online and the neurotransmitters firing.
Right.
During perimenopause, the wild fluctuations of those hormones cause an acute energy crisis in the brain, leading to temporary structural changes and that overwhelming feeling of fog. And we saw how that fog is compounded by a multi-front war of sleep deprivation and midlife stress.
Exactly.
But most importantly, we learned that this is a transition. It is the brain searching for a new normal. It is not permanent.
It is not permanent at all. And this raises an important question, one I actually want to leave you with today. We spent a lot of time talking about what the brain loses, how it struggles to adapt when its primary fuel source fluctuates and drops.
Yeah.
But consider the end of the SWAN study. Functional imaging shows that once a woman is postmenopausal, her brain largely recovers its cognitive function. And it does so while running on a mere fraction of the estrogen it used to require.
Wow.
This implies that the postmenopausal brain has undergone a massive, incredibly successful neurological rewiring. So what if we stop looking at menopause purely as a narrative of decline and loss?
I like where this is going.
What if instead we view the postmenopausal brain for what it truly is? A highly evolved, incredibly efficient machine that has learned to execute the exact same complex functions, but with significantly less fuel.
I absolutely love that. A highly evolved, incredibly efficient machine. It completely flips the script on how we view aging and cognition. So the next time you walk into a room and instantly forget why you were there and you feel that wave of panic setting in, take a deep breath.
Just breathe.
Your mind is not failing you. The picture is just a little muddy right now because your brain is busy rewiring the master power grid. Give it time, give it the support it needs, and trust that the fog will eventually lift.